Welcome, YouTubers. I just wanted to welcome you to my new incarnation of this channel. I'm calling it Miller Talk because this is my after-work show where I get to express my views, talk about a few issues that are important to me, and observations that I have. We'll leave the comedy and shit to the side because there's just too many important things. One thing I want to talk about today is the Unite the Right 2. Unite the Right 2 in Washington, D.C. last Sunday. I was there, and I was there with my son, and we participated in that event, counter-protesting, the Unite the Right. Personally, I don't think there's any room in America for this kind of shit, so we went up there to, express that opinion. Couple of first observation, and it's always the first observation when I go to D.C. First thing you see, the nation's capital, right? That's a shining jewel of freedom and democracy in the world. And the first thing you'll see is homeless people. That's the very first thing you see. So as soon as I parked the truck and got out of the parking garage, went to the rally point, the first thing I saw was a homeless man with half a shoe on each foot, just his toes were out there, and he was looking dazed and confused. He had these old sneakers that were blown out, and I mean blown out. Not like I wore when I was a teenager. I mean like it was a half a shoe. And he seemed completely incoherent, out of it, wandering around, confused. He probably needed to be in a hospital. He needed to be cared for, and was not receiving the care that he deserved as a human being. The next thing I saw was homeless veteran out there missing his legs, less than 30, young guy, wearing a desert top, 101st patch on his arm, combat infantry badge on his chest, and that could have been a number of kids that I knew and served with, and went overseas with, and all the people I was with, I brought them back. Not everybody that I knew and served with came back, and I see this kid out there in a wheelchair, obviously tossed to the side like trash. If there are programs out there for him, and there may be, he obviously doesn't know how to access them, and he needs some assistance in accessing them. And then he's at the point where like nobody really gives a fuck. Here's this kid in his wheelchair asking for handouts, and we're on our way to this rally. Next thing I see is a middle-aged woman sleeping on the sidewalk, and you have to, I've been to that point of being so taxed physically that you will sleep literally anywhere, because it's not like you go to sleep, it's your body gives the fuck out. And here's this woman on the sidewalk, her body has given out. Whatever she did in the day was too much for her. Whatever she did in the week, the month, the year has been too much for her. Her body has collapsed, and there she is on the sidewalk. And what can I do about it? Not a goddamn thing, really. I mean, I can give relief where I can. Here's $1. But does that stop the problem? No, it won't. So where am I getting with this? I really want to talk about institutional racism and individual racism. And I want to talk about the working class and the working class divide, and why they divide us and how we get divided. This is going to be a ramble over a couple of Millers. So, buckle in, man. This is not easy shit to hear, and it's not easy shit to talk about, and it's not easy shit to look yourself in the face and in the mirror and honestly assess yourself. Like, where do you sit, in the grand scheme of things, and accumulation of wealth and accumulation of accolades and personal advancement, and who do you hurt, who do you step on along the way to achieve it, whose lives are crushed. What's the value of human life? I mean, we sit down and evaluate that. We have high ideals. Do we live up to them? I really don't think we do. Spiritually, mentally, definitely not physically. Am I an optimist? Yeah, I think when you actually see people interact with each other on a regular basis in day-to-day life, most people are genuinely kind and cooperative, but we have systems, and that brings out the worst in us. And that's why I talk about systemic racism versus individual racism, right? So we've all met racists, like unapologetic racists, or we've at least watched them on TV. Some of us are closet racists. Some of us are unaware of our racism. Here's the Miller Show. And it goes on from there. When you meet a racist, racism is so full of inconsistencies. It's really an unworkable philosophy. It's really an unworkable ideology. And it does produce cognitive dissonance. And I know that's a word that's thrown around a lot these days. But it does, because it's illogical and inconsistent, and you have to interact with people on a daily basis. So you wrestle with these inconsistencies in your own life. People you work with, people you see on the street that aren't being vicious, that aren't being mean, being kind, helpful maybe. And so there's a constant, back and forth. Within a racist mind, their brains are going like this, constantly back and forth and back and forth. And there's two ways that they can deal with it, and that's one, through isolation and only sticking with people that don't trigger them and trigger that kind of dissonance. Or two, they strike out and be violent. And I'm even including the old fucking cracker that you meet sitting on his fucking tractor, spitting tobacco. I mean, that's a stereotype in and of itself, because I know plenty of those guys that are black too. But that old fucking cracker, he might have his words laced with fucking racist terms, and then turn around and be the first guy to pull out his wallet when there's a little girl that needs, diabetes medication. There's inconsistencies because we're human beings and we have a conscience, right? So even the fucking gnarliest looking fucking 88 tattooed right here, swastika tattooed right there, that motherfucker violent asshole, and I will say asshole, and they are violent, and they do need to be met where that shit is to be stopped. But even that motherfucker has a conscience. Unless you're a complete, total fucking psychopath. And, there's a few of those out there, but they're actually rare. Most people have a conscience. And racism cannot survive a conscience. So that's the biggest difference, right? Individual racism cannot survive the conscience unless it isolates itself or it's always on the attack. It has to do one of those two things or both. But it cannot survive normal daily life without some kind of battle going on inside, because it is inconsistent. It contradicts itself constantly. David Duke even contradicts himself in his own videos on a regular fucking basis, because racism is not workable. And it's not workable because it's not logical. Alright, so, but institutional racism, the thing that keeps racism individually moving, that's a different story. Because institutional racism is based on systems. Systems do not have a conscience. They are systems. They are mechanical. All right? They do not respond to conscience. They do not respond to conflict. They just do and are self-replicating and seek to maintain themselves. They have no personality. They have no cares or desires except for the maintenance of the system itself. And when human beings get caught up in these systems, that's how systemic racism continues. The 3 homeless people that I saw, 2 were black, 1 was white, the vet was white, the other 2 were black. The homeless people I see out there are disproportionately black or some other race. There are reasons for this. systems. There are reasons why blacks have disproportionate access to education and advancement. There are reasons why natives in this country have disproportionate access. Why are their diabetes rates so high? Because they're eating a poverty diet, not a natural diet, and they don't have access to it because capital has taken over the market on that, right? They're forced into living situations generationally. Housing markets are systemically racist. How does it work? I'll give you an example, right? You come from a neighborhood that generationally you are supposed to live in because of urban development programs back in the 50s or 60s, right? You somehow managed to scrape out a bit. You've got some skills, you got some education, you got some work behind you, right? You apply for a loan, a business loan or a property loan, and you get denied. You get denied because you are high risk, because the neighborhood you're from is high risk, and the property that you have in the past, if you have any, you might not have any property, you have nothing to put down, you're high risk. So nobody's willing to take a chance on you. Even though you have a 5-year business plan, you and your wife have this thing figured out, you've been working this job for 20 years, you know the business inside and out, you have a piece of property you know you could afford if you could get the loan, and you know you'd get a return on that investment. The bank teller may not consider himself a racist, or loan agent, I should say. The loan agent doesn't consider himself a racist. He's just a regular working guy too. He puts on a suit, he's not swinging a hammer like I do, but he's a working guy. He's got a family to feed. He's got a mortgage of his own to pay. He relies on this job. The application comes down denied, and he's the one who has to tell them, I'm sorry, I can't process your loan. Now, it's not because he individually is a racist. He may or may not be. But the system is telling him that it can't happen. Now, he could go against the system, grant the loan anyway, and lose his job, and then lose his house, and then divorce his wife, and then lose his kids, and all kind of hell will break loose. He's not going to risk that. So he's forced into a situation where he has to sacrifice another family to maintain his own. That's how they divide the working class. He has to sacrifice another family's well-being to maintain his own. On the other side, predators, back in 2008, maybe they were giving loans to everybody, came down the pike, made them really attractive. Why? Because debt became a commodity. They figured out how to monetize debt to their advantage. So subprime mortgage loaners were going out there and giving fucking ridiculous goddamn loans to people who they knew couldn't afford it, because that was not the point. Your ability to pay that loan was not the point. They were preying on you. You were fucking bleeding fish in a sea of sharks. That's how systemic racism works. And it's so ingrained in the system. It goes back 500 years. When we took the first African and put him in North America to do our work for us, and then we killed the indigenous population to clear the land for more of those Africans to do the work for us, the system was already in play, man. It is. Now, I'm not talking about white guilt. Listen, dude, you're a victim too. Working class people, you're being used. You may not be the bank teller that has to sacrifice another family for your family. You might be another guy fucking swinging a hammer, next to the black guy and next to the newly arrived El Salvadoran guy. You might be a soldier sent overseas, to be another fucking bullet sponge, along with other people. But when they tell you the reason for your lack of success is because people are siphoning off of the system, they're dividing you. Why is there a rise in racist fucking movements right now, like right-wing fucking Nazis, goddamn fucking Nazis? My grandfather would be losing his fucking mind right now if he was alive today. I'll tell you why. Wages have been stagnating, even though production is at an all-time high. Even though the wealth generated in this country is at an all-time high, we are still living, we're still making the same we were 20 years ago, right? Like, I'm a fucking diver, right? You think that pays a lot of money? No, the fuck it doesn't. I risk my goddamn life every time I hat up. I get paid the same now as I did fucking 10 years ago. There's been no fucking pay raises, right? The only places where there's pay raises is where there's strong unions. And there's a lot of propaganda out about unions, all right? So keep that shit in mind, man. So when you sit there and you're busting your ass and you're working 60, 80 hours a week and you're not getting by, you're not making your mortgage, or you're not making your car payment, or you gotta sacrifice something, you know, well, fucking assholes up there give you a fucking convenient goddamn scapegoat. And that's the other working class guy. The other working class guy that doesn't look like you. Well, listen up, folks. As long as systemic racism exists, as long as racism exists, they will be able to divide the working class. And as long as they can do that, they can keep rolling in the money. Like I said, production is at an all-time high. Profits are at an all-time high for shareholders and the guys at the top. Not for you. That shit does not trickle down. They keep that shit. How long is this sustainable? I don't know. It doesn't sound like a very sustainable plan. You'd think you'd want like a really strong base to work off of, like a really strong platform, but they just keep gobbling, right? 1% of the top owns 90% of the wealth or some shit like that. You can look it up. Don't fact check me, man. The concepts are the same. But they can keep us at each other's throats. They're gonna keep fucking doing it, right? So why would a working class man fucking support Trump? Because they were left in the dust by the Democratic Party. That's why they were underrepresented. Nobody listened to their concerns. They were talked down to. So they went to a guy who talked to them, right? That silver-tongued fucking devil actually took the time to at least address them. And let me tell you something, like, as an amateur photographer, I like to go out there and do a lot of street photography and shit. Talk to homeless people, and they will let me take hundreds of photographs. They will tell me their life story. Why? Because I acknowledge them. Because I see their humanity. They want to be seen and they want to be acknowledged. And it's like that with every fucking kicked dog. Black, white, or whatever. They want to be seen. If you're so fucking downtrodden and somebody just takes the time to reach out, and it could be a fucking Nazi. It could be. That is exactly how Hitler did it back in the 30s. He took unemployed veterans out there on the streets, fucking homeless guys, right? And he gave them purpose, and he gave them value, and he told them they were a good boy, and they were his dogs for them, you know, for him. So, you know, I'm a couple Millers into this, so if I fucking stumble a little bit, whatever, deal with it. You get the concept, right? This is what's happening right now in America. So wake the fuck up, man. Like, every working class struggle is everybody's struggle. The farmer about to lose his farm is your struggle. The factory worker who has not had a pay raise in 5 years is your struggle. The fucking barista down the street is your fucking struggle, right? The kid who can't fucking make his rent, right? He's like living 10 deep with 15 other knuckleheads in an apartment somewhere. That's your struggle too, right? And black people living in subsidized housing under fucking unbelievable conditions. getting beaten up, shot by the police, beaten down, talked down to, and blamed for their own plight. That is definitely part of the struggle. And it pertains to you. A black person shot in the street reflects on you, working man, whoever you are. So before I go off on a tangent, I'm going to stop this video, come back tomorrow, drink a couple more Millers, and we'll have some more Miller time.